so-called flying saucers.
There's a whole fleet of them. Look on the SA. It's rotating.
Welcome to Kill the Stigma. Today we're going to be talking about a few things. We're going to focus on a little bit of history and how the UFO cover-up started. Just a little bit of that, but how it peaked in 1952. We're going to talk about Donald Mansell, an astronomer who was the director of Harvard Observatory, and how he was also in the MJ-12 documents, a controversial document that has many fruits to its name. So we're going to focus on Donald Mansell today. I'm going to play for you guys an old clip from the 50s. Donald Kehoe, who was somebody who was advocating for UFO transparency. And Mike Wallace interviewing him, and he brings up Donald Mansell. We're going to talk about some coincidences about Donald Mansell. We're going to talk about the Mansell gap. I'm going to talk about that. I'm going to show you a few clips. And
misinformation
Let's go.
or sightings of objects which seem to be one thing but are in fact another. But you mentioned a Dr. Donald Menzel, who's a professor of astrophysics at Harvard before. Now, I think you will agree that he's one of the world's most distinguished astrophysicists. Is that not so?
I think there are others who are equally capable, but do not agree with him.
He is one of the world's most distinguished astrophysicists, though I think we can agree on that. In any case, he stresses, you see, that pilots are not expert observers, that they, as well as others, can see flying saucers when it's only, to quote him, the wrapper off somebody's lunch blowing around in the air, end quote. But again, let's come back to the point, the most important point, Major Kehoe, and that is why will the Air Force, why will the United States government withhold information from United States citizens? For what reason?
Because they're treating them like children, the way they did with the H-bomb at first, and the way they've been doing with other things. Now, I'm not attacking the United States Air Force. I'm attacking a small group in there that has been persistently keeping this from the public.
So that right there was a video from 1958. Donald Kehoe and Mike Wallace. Mike Wallace was basically like, come on, man, it's flying saucer business. Come on. What's going on with you? You know, Donald Kehoe, you're a serious guy, but what's going on with this? And there he mentions, well, what about Donald Mansell? You know, he's a very high-level astrophysicist, and he says that these things are basically just, you know, mistakes, illusions, hoaxes, and Donald Kehoe is like, well, there's some others that don't agree, but let's talk about Donald Mansell. I want to talk today about Donald Mansell. So here's my goal with this channel. I want to obviously kill the stigma. I want to talk about facts, history, and the present. So later I'll do a video on the present. I want to focus on the Wilson Davis memo. I'm trying to dissect Jesse Michaels' video with James Fox, which was amazing. Shout out to those two guys. They're awesome. Anyway, Donald Mansell, first elite debunker, super high up, member of MJ-12, whether real or not, I don't know, but that document has so many fruits. Donald Kehoe, which was in that video that I just showed, he started NICAP, which was like the first, how do you say this, a first organization to look into UFOs, kind of like MUFON. Well, Admiral Hillenkotter, Admiral Roscoe Hillenkotter, first director of the CIA, helped him with that. Okay, why is the first director of the CIA Donald Kehoe make an organization to study UFOs? Where are the historians in this? Why is nobody looking at this? Is that we're just going to pretend that didn't happen? First director of the CIA, which his name is also in the MJ-12 document. You know, I thought those documents were a hoax, but the names have so many fruits. They're delicious. Those fruits are delicious, and you cannot ignore those fruits. I want to also show a clip here of Beatrice Villarroel talking to Richard Dolan, and thanks to her, we found out what happened to Donald Mansell.
They didn't talk about the destruction of the plates. They only said he prevented, for a very few years, the collection of new astronomical data. And that was known as the Menzel Gap. And when you read Wikipedia, it really makes it seem like we're talking just a couple of years in the 1950s. But in fact, it's much longer than that. It's a 15-year gap. 15 years.
So there is an astronomer who wrote about it, like in her autobiography. So
yeah, let's take a look at it.
Finally, I got the scans. I haven't gotten the whole book yet, but the scans. And she became a persona non grata because she tried to defend the plate collection. And so he was not very nice to her.
You could give her name, please?
Doris Hoplite.
Dr. Doris Hoplite.
And apparently he didn't even ask the astronomers what plates to destroy. He asked his secretary to go and destroy the plates. So,
Shannon Friedman, I hope you're watching from wherever you are, because I know that you were looking into this, and you didn't find about the Mansell Gap, but we're going to talk about the Mansell Gap. The Mansell Gap started in 1952. In 1952, there was 2 weekends in a row where UFOs were flying over the Capitol, or the White House. People were freaking out. In my intro,
the so-called flying saucers.
That is due to the 1952 flybys. And what happened was, after that, Donald Mansell gets put, literally right after that, gets the position in Harvard as director of Harvard Astronomy. And what does he do? I'll let Beatrice Villarroel tell you.
Dr. Chapley retired in 1952, and Donald Mansell became his successor. One of the first things Mansell did was to ask his secretary, whose previous job had been as personal manager for the Jordan Mars department store, to discard a third of the plates in the plate stacks in order to make room for more office space. When some astronomers took courage to object after many plates had been thrown out, he continued having plates removed from the stacks, but stored in the cellar under the 15-inch telescope dome. He had long plank shelves made and put so many plates on each shelf that the planks sagged in the middle in such a way that the upper shelves actually rested on top of the plates on the shelf below. Moreover, there was no concrete or other covering on the dirt floor. Although the foundation consisted of huge stone blocks, roots of the trees penetrated the walls and the humidity was high. Inevitably, the plates were doomed. The Harvard plate collection had been the largest in the world, probably the only one covering the sky from pole to pole, with some series dating back to 1882. How could any astronomer, regardless of his own speciality in research, wantonly destroy so high a percentage of plates that were vital to many research projects, especially for variable stars?
Mm-hmm.
So he destroys 1/3 of astronomical plates without mentioning anything to anybody. Super shady. And you had this other scientist, I think her name was Dorit, I'm missing it, but Beatrice Villarroel did say it. Hey, this is a crime to science. Why would you do this? And Beatrice Villarroel found in the astronomical plates some anomalies. We had nothing up there in 1952. Sputnik was the first Russian satellite that made it to space in 1957. So why was Donald Mansell destroying astronomical plates, which are just basically, scans of the sky, right? Of stars, whatnot, of the atmosphere and whatever. I might have said that kind of wrong, but I'm not an astronomer. Why was he destroying 1/3 of plates? And not only that, he prevented surveys, future surveys, until 1966. So they call this the Mansell Gap, okay? From 1952 to 1966, what happened in 1966? The Condom Committee. The Condom Committee happened after the first UFO hearing due to a flap in Michigan in 1966. The people were freaking out and they were calling Congress, what do? We don't know what to do with these things. And they had a congressional hearing. And they put the scientific organization head by Mr. Condon. And Mr. Condon, Jesse Michaels explains, Jesse Michaels, says that he helped invent the secrecy law of 1946, the Atomic Energy 1946 Atomic Energy Act, which then evolved into the 1954 Atomic Energy Act, which is where the UFO secrecy is, which basically you have no oversight. Those people can do whatever they want, and that's where they hide anything that falls into, because if anything nuclear, so we know that UFOs have radiation, you know, they emit radiation and all that. If anything like that falls immediately into that category, that is classified higher than the atomic bomb. So how many coincidences do we need again? Because we got the MJ-12 coincidence. We have the 1950 to 1966 Mansell gap. And sorry. It's so obvious. It's so obvious. And I do want to correct Richard Dolan on something, because he did say that the Wikipedia did fix that. Now they're talking about the Mansell gap, and they mention the Mansell gap here. And so even Wikipedia, which is the worst source for UFOs, please do not use Wikipedia to look up anything on this topic. It's terrible. You have the guerrilla skeptics, but even the guerrilla skeptics, because it's a fact. Now, this is my last words. When you build something, the foundation must be solid. And if the first UFO debunker, not necessarily first, but the first elite UFO debunker is a weak link that's compromised, then the whole house of cards falls apart. So what does that mean? Something stinks.
Studied under Don Menzel. Don Menzel is the #1
skeptic,
UFO skeptic, debunker, but he's also rumored to be
the deepest in the know,
on the Majestic 12 or whatever equivalent committee or whatever.
Stanton Friedman was a real advocate for that. He goes, if it's not called Majestic 12, there's a group just like it.
It's a legitimate document. It establishes, 1, that a flying saucer crashed, 2, that the wreckage was recovered, 1947, 3, that the government has successfully kept that secret since that time, 4, that a very high-level group, including, as it happens, the first 4 directors of Central Intelligence, first Secretary of Defense, etc., was set up, established to deal with.
He was convinced of it. He was
those were all the guys who were like, who would be. So
that's all I got.